All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. My name is Cassandra, and you're joining me for another episode of Soul Purpose, this new series that I've started. And I'm really excited today because most of you follow my channel because of Yin Yoga and your love of Yin Yoga. And today we are joined by Bernie Clark, one of the leading teachers in Yin Yoga, and also another fellow Canadian yogi. So welcome, Bernie. Thank you so much for being on.
Thanks, Cassandra. It's good to be here. And you're right, Yin is in Canada.
Yes, exactly. Yin is in Canada, definitely. So for people who might not know about you or know who you are, would you be able to give a brief introduction about yourself and how you got into teaching?
Okay. Well, I came at this whole enterprise kind of late in life, although I've been meditating since my early 20s. And to me, I consider that yoga. But I didn't start into the asana practice until my mid-40s. And I did more of a yang style of practice for about 5 years. And then I kind of accidentally stumbled across Yin Yoga. And I really loved the balance of it. So I started to just dive into it. And I met Sarah Powers and Paul Grilly and trained with them quite a bit. And just got inspired to go deeper and deeper. So one time in a training course with Paul and Sarah, I wondered who has the domain yinyoga.com. So when I got home from the course, I decided to check it out. And nobody had it. So I decided to get it, just thinking one day I'd give it to Paul. And then I decided to put up a few little things on the website, and that became a book, and it became videos and teacher trainings. It kind of all just grew organically into what I've been doing these days.
Wow. Yeah, you're lucky definitely to have that domain. What a useful thing to have. But you've grown that website into a huge community. It's more, I mean, you're downplaying it. It's more than just posting a couple of pictures. You have a really interactive forum and great discussions that happen out there. Like, it seems to be a very vibrant website. There's a lot of people that are on there quite frequently.
Yeah, it's been growing since I started in 2006. So there's 10 years worth of history there.
And how did you accidentally stumble into Yin Yoga?
Well, I was taking a second level training course in Thai yoga massage. The training with a guy named Saul David Ray. I'd done his earlier 10-day course, and I was doing his advanced 9-day course. And every morning, Saul would do a yoga practice for us before we get into the Thai massage. And I guess on the last day, he ran out of ideas. So he said, how about we do a Yin class? And this is 2003 or 2004. Nobody had heard of Yin Yoga, so we all said, sure. And it was quite different, quite unique. And I probably wouldn't have thought too much more about it, except the next day flying home, I wandered into a bookstore, and there was a video called Yin Yoga by Sarah Powers.
Oh, okay.
This is what Saul was teaching us. So I got that, and I took it home, and I did it every day for about 3 or 4 months, and I found it really helped my Ashtanga practice. So that motivated me to just get into it more and more.
So a lot of the students, and myself included, I did not like Yin Yoga the first couple of times I did it because it just brings up so much resistance, and I've always been a bit more of a type A personality. So learning to slow down and be silent, and just especially because I did not have a strong meditative practice. So coming into Yin Yoga was really challenging. I'm guessing that your meditation practice helped you ease into the Yin Yoga practice a little bit more?
Yeah, it did. It was more meditative. And as Sarah Powers likes to say, people do what they like, not what they need. And so there are a lot of people who are more yang-like. They're kind of yangsters by nature. And the yin aspect really does balance them. And that's what I found. I didn't particularly like the long holds either at first. They were pretty intense. But I felt right away it was something I needed. My practice then was all vinyasa and Ashtanga, so this really did help to give me that other half.
It's a huge difference. It's a lot of people I find that a big misconception about Yin Yoga is that it's very easy and very beginner friendly, which it can be, but people are always so surprised with how challenging it really is. It's challenging, but just in a different way. How many years have you been teaching now and practicing Yin Yoga?
Well, I started Yin Yoga around 2003.
Okay.
I've been teaching yoga since 1998, so 18 years of teaching. So I found it after about 6 years of teaching.
So
after working with Paul and Sarah, I did a 10-day teacher training that they jointly did together back in 2004 or 5, I guess. And I was teaching ever since then.
So in the past, 12, 13 years, do you find that it's changed a little bit, the practice of Yin Yoga? Have you seen it evolve? Is it different to what you were doing in 2003?
No, the practice is pretty similar, but the popularity of it has certainly grown. Paul and Sarah did a lot of traveling in the early days. They started practicing this way back in the late 1980s and 1990s. And it took a little while for a critical mass to grow up from their students who became teachers, and they started going all over the world. And then sometime around 2005 to 2010, it really kind of made the curve and started just growing like crazy. I think because it's so needed. Because mostly yoga was either yang yoga, more of a gentler hatha, or restorative. So it was all the way either very yang or you're falling asleep.
Yeah.
Just kind of the bottom half of that.
Yeah, that's interesting. A lot of people people are always asking me what's the difference between restorative and yin yoga. And I do kind of struggle with answering that question. So how do you tackle that?
Well, you have to define what we mean by the term yin. There's nothing that's automatically yin. You need a context for it. So if I was to ask you, what is hot water? Is hot water yin or yang? A lot of people would say yang. But relative to boiling water, hot water is yin because it's cooler than boiling water. So there's nothing that's absolutely yin. Restorative yoga is yin-like compared to Ashtanga or Bikrams or something like that. But it's not what we would call yin yoga, in quotes, which is the style of yoga developed by Paul Grilly and Sarah Powers. So if you want to categorize a style of yoga as yin yoga, that's the style that you and I kind of teach, the long-held static stresses and the holds. But restorative yoga is certainly yin-like, but it's not yin yoga. Yin yoga tends to take people who are already fairly healthy and makes them optimal, whereas restorative yoga tends to take somebody who's broken and makes them healthy.
Chronic pain and that kind of stuff, they'll be more drawn towards it. And it's interesting because you look at people like Polly Zink and their yin yoga, and it's a lot different than when I teach. That's for sure. Like there's a big contrast, and I've only kind of encountered his stuff last year. And when I was looking, I was like, have I been doing yin yoga wrong this whole time? Because this looks nothing really like what I've been doing. So I guess it's kind of relative, but he's been teaching it for years and years and years and years.
Yeah, up until about 2008 or 9, Paulie called his practice Taoist yoga. And Paul really had taken a few of his classes one year. He went once a week for several months. And it was the full gamut of Taoist yoga, which is fantastic. And if you've seen Paulie, you know, he's an amazing person. He's got these abilities that comes around, you know, very rarely. But he was also a martial arts teacher, and his yoga was to prepare people for martial arts. So Paul extracted from that just some parts. And then with Paul's own experience with Dr. Moriyama, who was a Japanese scientist and student of Taoism, and from Paul's own anatomy training at UCLA and other places, he put together something very unique, something that was a yin yoga class entirely. And then over the years, Paulie started to change the name of his Taoist yoga to yin and yang yoga, and then to yin yoga, but it still is Taoist yoga. So it's not the same as what Paul and Sarah developed. So we have the same name applying to two very different styles. And they're both wonderful, but they're not the same.
Right. And I think I read an interview somewhere where you tried to copyright or trademark the term yin yoga just so no one else could do it. Is that true? A friend of mine is a lawyer and also a yoga teacher. We just had the thought that Paul Grilly said, you don't need any permission to teach yin yoga. You know, you don't need certification. It's a descriptive term, like saying white yoga or black yoga or hot yoga. Nobody can trademark that. But then I had the website, and we started to get worried, well, what if somebody tried to trademark it? Then all these other people who are teaching it and everything, they might be in trouble. So we applied to the U.S. Patent Office and Trademark Office just to see what would happen. And as my lawyer friend said, you know, they're going to reject it. But if they reject it, then it's on file. So if anybody else... The precedent, right
there, the precedent's been set. So sure enough, we did that. And yeah, you can't trademark yin yoga. It's a descriptive term.
Good. Good.
Nobody owns it. And anybody can call what they do yin yoga. Restorative yoga is yin-like. Paulie's got his yin yoga. But in the style of Paul Grilly and Sarah Powers, this is the practice that we offer.
Yeah, and this is the practice that I think most people are fairly more familiar with and that kind of thing. So for me, I found that the biggest misconception with yin yoga is that it's easy. Have you found what's yours? Sorry?
It can be simple, but simple doesn't mean easy.
Right, exactly.
Challenging things. The type A, the youngsters, they love to get sweaty and move all for 2 hours. They can do the primary series, and that to them is kind of easy. But to sit for 5, 6, 10 minutes in one pose and feel the sensations come up and just be present, that's challenging. And I think that's also the same challenge that a lot of yoga students face when they try to take up meditation. Originally, I was a meditator and I had yoga to help my meditation. But very rarely do you get yoga students adding meditation to help their yoga, because that's challenging. And we find that in Yin. It's challenging just to be with the sensations.
Yes, and to not become critical of them and to just observe them as they arise. I know it's certainly, I had a very, very, very difficult time meditating, and it's not until maybe 2 or 3 years into my Yin yoga practice that it just finally clicked, or it finally felt a little bit, not easier, because I'd be lying if I said I wasn't still struggling with it at times, but it just became a lot more quiet. So a lot more enjoyable that way. But no matter how often I tried beforehand, it wasn't until I had like a consistent Yin yoga practice that I kind of had that breakthrough. But it took a long time.
It mirrors life. And there's times in life when it's not easy, and there's times when it's challenging. And you don't solve life, you don't master it, you just keep living it. So.
Yeah, that's true. So how have you benefited the most from a practice of Yin yoga, a consistent practice of Yin yoga?
Well, there's so many different layers to look at. You can look at it the physical layer. I find now my yoga practice has evolved to 3 sort of channels. And there's 3 ways to look at physical fitness. There's strength, which is stability. There's endurance, and then there's mobility. And Yin is the thing I go to maintain and enhance my mobility. Whereas Yang practice is great for strength and great for endurance, but I'll also run sprints for endurance, and I'll swing kettlebells for strength as well. But the Yin yoga is the one that really helps me physically with mobility and keep whatever degree of flexibility I need to be functional. But there's another layer, which is the energetic layer, and that's to stimulate, whether you call it prana from the Indian map, or chi from the Taoist map, or bioelectromagnetism from a Western map. It just helps to stimulate the flow of communicating energy throughout the body. But then the 3rd layer is, of course, the mindfulness layer, the mind-body layer. And it is a beautiful way to meditate, because you got these little 5 or 10-minute meditations. People can't find time to do a 20 or 30-minute meditation, but 3 or 4 times a week they can do Yin practice, which is made up of a whole bunch of little mindfulness practices.
So are you evenly practicing your Yang practices with your Yin? Are you still an Ashtanga practitioner?
No, I kind of got away from Ashtanga when I got into my early 50s. I still do vinyasa-based flow yoga as well as some hatha yoga, but I do Yin about half the time. So my practice is half Yang, half Yin. And the older we get, the more it makes sense.
Well, I guess everything evolves with time, right? We can't expect our yoga practice to look the same with each decade that goes on if we're still practicing with each decade that goes on. But going back,
we don't look the same, so.
Yeah, exactly. So going back, like as a teacher, when I was first learning about Yin yoga, I found that there was a lot of variations from teacher to teacher. For example, on your website, you list 25 Yin yoga asanas with lots of variations on how to do them. Paul Grilly and Sarah Powers, I believe they have 18 or 20 asanas. And then one of the teachers that I practice with the most and that really introduced me to Yin yoga is Felicia Tomasco from California. And she would there was about 40 different poses that you can do. So how are you defining what can and cannot be a Yin yoga pose? Can they all be a Yin yoga pose if they're done in a passive, non-muscular contraction kind of way?
Well, Paul Grilly has a cute little saying that 20 is plenty. You don't need a lot of postures in Yin yoga. First, right. You don't have time to do a lot. If you're doing a 60 or 90-minute class and each pose is 7 or 8 minutes, you're only going to have time to do 7 or 8 poses.
Right.
And do one side, then you have to do this side. Well, again, you're not going to need a lot. Plus, the area that we target in Yin yoga mainly is from the navel to the knees. So we're working the lower back and the hips. And there's only 6 movements in the hips, and there's only basically 4 movements in the lower back. So again, you don't need a huge vocabulary. You can certainly add more things to it, but Yin is simple. So let's keep it simple. The principle behind yin is long-held static stresses with the muscles relaxed.
Mm-hmm.
When I first taught yin yoga here in Vancouver, it was at a studio where the studio owner really didn't know what yin yoga was, but she deferred to me and let me create this class, but she never took the class. And then about half a year after starting that, I had to go out of town on a business trip, and there was nobody around to sub for me. So she subbed. And I came back the next week and asked the students, how was it? And it turned out she was holding warrior pose for 5 minutes.
Oh.
She'd heard that yin yoga was just a long-held pauses, but it had to be with the muscles relaxed. So
right.
Not just any pose can be a yin pose. You want to be in a place where the muscles relax, you can stay there, you get into the deeper connective tissues. Yeah, there's variations you can do on the theme, but you don't need a lot of postures.
That's interesting. See, so one thing personally, and I'll teach it as well, and I haven't seen it anywhere, but I learned it from Felicia Tomasco, just a neck stretch, just letting your head tilt, that's not something, but it's passive. I'm not really contracting. So could I call that a yin yoga pose?
Yeah, in my complete guide to yin yoga and on my website, I have a section called yin yoga for the upper body. Now, the upper body tissues aren't as strong and stable as the lower body. So while I might be in a pose like shoelace, some people call it gomukhasana or cow face, the hips marinate for 7 or 8 minutes, but then you can do a twist and you can do some head work or you can do some arm work. But you're only going to hold these ones for 2 or 3 minutes.
Right, exactly.
Hips linger longer, but the upper body, 3 minutes there in a passive way, that should be enough.
In a way, I kind of like that there's a bit of flexibility with the practice and that it's not so rigorously defined. Like I like that we are able to have variations depending on what we're feeling like. I think that's one of the things that drew me to it the most. But I would like to talk about your book because you just mentioned it. This is one of them.
Yes.
Yoga here.
It's the green book.
Sorry?
The green book, yes.
The green book, right. You have 3 now?
I've got 4 out.
4 out. What is the 4th one?
The one that just came out is called Your Body, Your Yoga.
Oh, okay. I'll have to check out into this one.
I have that here. I might be too zoomed in here, but this is a book that talks about how your anatomy is uniquely yours. Just like our faces are different, our dental patterns are different, your bones are different.
Right.
Some people, because of the shape of the pelvis and the orientation of the acetabulum and the twist in the femur, they're never going to be able to do lotus pose or a Baddha Konasana, butterfly pose.
Mm-hmm.
But we have this problem in the yang world of these ideas of alignment cues, which often become miscues because where should the feet be in mountain pose? We kind of tell people feet together. But some people with a huge twist in their tibia, their neutral is like this. And for them to bring their feet together, they're having to do a huge internal rotation of their hips, which actually puts them out of alignment. So this natural human variation is being ignored by a lot of teachers trying to get everyone to look the same way in postures. So that's the whole point of Your Body, Your Yoga, is to scientifically define these variations, how often they show up, and what it means for your yoga practice.
Did you mostly write it for the teacher in mind to learn how to teach it better, or is this more geared towards students who need to learn how to be aware that just because a teacher is telling them to do a certain thing, it might not be appropriate for them to do it?
It's mostly for the teacher or the more advanced students who want to learn their own body and see how the variations and try to figure out for themselves. Another problem we have with yoga, especially yang yoga, is this idea that everything is muscular based. What stops us is short, tight muscles. And that is only one small part of the whole equation. There are short, tight muscles, but it could be a neurological thing, it could be a fascial thing, it could be ligaments, it could be joint capsules, or it could be the body hitting the body. Like if I'm flexing my elbow, I can't bring my wrist to the shoulder because I'm hitting compression. A lot of people get that in their hips. The bones are hitting, and they can't go any further, but they're trying to go further. They're not recognizing what stopped them as an ultimate unchangeable fact of their biology. But they try to go further, and that's when they get injured. So another part of this book is to explain all the variations of what stops us. If it's muscles, yeah, let's keep working through that. But if it's bone on bone, just accept that you've reached the limit of how far you're going to go in this lifetime.
Just accept it. And that's a hard part, right? That's a hard part. We have these ideas of where we want to go and what we want to look like, and then we have to be faced with the reality that maybe it won't happen, and we have to cope with it.
Right.
Okay, well, that's good. I'll definitely check it out. I know this one was a huge part of me in learning to teach Yin Yoga because there wasn't many trainings offered in my area at the time. So I learned so much about it, and I highly recommend for anyone out there viewing to go pick it up. If you are on my channel because you like Yin Yoga, odds are you will definitely enjoy this book. Definitely in depth, but you learn a lot for sure. I also had your old PDF version where I had printed off like 300 pages of materials, and I was like, oh, this might not have been the best idea, but I did it anyway.
Good. Well, you're dedicated.
Dedicated. But I was like, okay, I'll just get the book. I'll just get the real one. It'll be a little bit easier. So I'm speaking about my YouTube channel, but you have a channel as well. Do you ever think about going back to it and uploading some new content, maybe some full-length classes, anything like that in the future?
Well, I have had full-length classes recorded through a company that was called My Yoga Online.
Okay.
That started in Vancouver. And I can't remember how many they've done, a couple of dozen of my classes. They got merged with something called Gaia. Gaia TV now. So I do have a lot of classes on Gaia. So I haven't felt the need to do my own and put them up on my channel. So my channel is just the 12 most common postures that we do in Yin Yoga. There's about a 10-minute explanation of the pose, and then there's about a 5 to 8 minute directing you through the pose. So you can put them together in a playlist and do your own classes. And that's available through yinyoga.com as well.
Right, yinyoga.com. Yeah, I subscribe to the channel. So I think, you have about, I'd say 20-ish or so videos, if not more, even on that channel. But did you work with Eckhart Yoga as well?
I haven't worked with them. They've published some my articles and so forth. But she has a lot of Yin Yoga videos there as well. So that's another good source to go to.
Yeah, she's wonderful. I'm a big fan of Eckhart Yoga. She has some fantastic content. Okay, well, this is wonderful. I mean, you've been practicing and teaching for so long. Are you still teaching any other styles as opposed to instead of just Yin, or is that really mainly your focus?
Well, I teach 4 classes a week at Semperviva Yoga Studios in Vancouver. Wednesday night is Power. So I do a Power Vinyasa class, and then Saturday morning is a Hatha class. And Sunday night is a Yin class followed by a meditation class. So yeah, I still have a foot in all those different styles and techniques.
Very well balanced.
Yang and Yin.
Well, you always seem to be working on a different project. So what's new for you in the future? You just published this new book.
Well, this book is actually the first 2 volumes of a 5-volume set. And the first volume is about the physiology of the tissues and how fascia and joint capsules are different than muscles. The second volume is looking at the lower body, from the pelvis, the knees, the ankles, and feet. So I still have to work on the axial body and the upper body. And then the 5th volume will be the effects of symmetry and asymmetry and proportions in the body. So I've got a couple of years ahead of me to do these, to finish this project off.
That's a massive project.
It took me 3 years to do the first 2 volumes. So, yeah.
Yeah. Are you doing this all by yourself? Do you work with partners at all? You do all this research? I mean, it's a lot of research.
It's inspired by Paul Grilly's work, and he and I Skype, and if I get stuck on something, he's always there to help me out. And there's a few other people who've done a great job of reviewing stuff for me. And Professor Stuart McGill at the University of Waterloo, who's a spine biomechanic. He's helping me with some ideas and so forth. And I have a few other friends who are yoga teachers, but also physiotherapists. So they'll help to keep me on the straight and narrow.
Awesome. Well, it's good to have a team around you. A nice team of support.
Yeah.
Okay, so for people, let's say people out there are watching this video and they have never done Yin Yoga before and they want to know if it's right for them. How would they know? How would they know if they should try Yin Yoga?
Well, that's a challenging question because everyone's so different. It's just like saying, should I take aspirin? Well, I don't really know. I'd have to learn a bit more about your biology, your biography. You go to a doctor and he would get to check you out. So for someone like that, probably the best idea is to go to a studio and talk to a teacher who teaches Yin Yoga. Explain your own background, where you come from, if you have any physical ailments, and then try it and see. I mean, you can always just try online or videos as well, as long as you promise to pay attention. Anything that's in any way painful, anything that's sharp, burning, tingly, electrical, these are things that most type A yogis ignore. And just through. They want to get past their edge. But in Yin Yoga, we go to the edge and kind of back off of it. You never want to go past the edge. So you pay attention. And if it feels safe to go so, you stay longer. Now, in Yin, time is more important than intensity. You don't have to have a lot of poses. You just need to stay longer in the poses you have. So beginners, I think, can benefit a lot from Yin Yoga because it teaches them how to pay attention, to get that while you're just being in a pose for 5 minutes. Versus in the Yang practice, you're only there for 5 breaths or 8 breaths, maybe a minute, and then you got to move on. So you don't quite get the same chance to really experience what your body is telling you. So beginners definitely can do Yin Yoga, but whether you as a beginner should do it, well, you got to be careful. Check it out.
Can you speak a bit more to finding your edge? Because I think that's really important. For example, myself, I came from the dance world and I didn't know what an edge was, to be honest, right? So my threshold of what I thought was tolerable pain or tolerable stretching was way, 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 way higher than it needed to be. And it wasn't until I actually learned to back off that my flexibility actually improved. But I think it took me a very long time to learn that edge. So what are some cues that people should be looking out for to know that this is the point where they should not be progressing any further and they've reached the intensity level that is suitable?
Right. Well, the first major thing is pain. If you're feeling pain, you're past your edge and your body's trying to give you a warning that if you stay there, you're going to hurt yourself. But a lot of people, they have no idea what pain is. Yeah. I've seen the Monty Python's movie Search for the Holy Grail, where King Arthur is having a joust with the Black Knight and cuts his arm off. And the Black Knight just says it's just a scratch. There are some yoga students who are like that. They're Black Knights. You know, their leg could be popping, cracking off their hip, and they'll think, you know,
it's fine.
Okay. So it's all subjective. But generally, anything that feels sharp, burning, stabbing, tingly, electrical, these are signals from the body that you need to back off. We don't want to go anywhere near that. In Yin Yoga, we say, go to your first stopping point. That's your first edge, and then back off of it. In time, you may open up and go to your next edge. So you kind of play the edge, but you never go over the edge. And so you pay attention. And there's lots of things to pay attention to, but if you've never been trained, because in the West, we're trained to ignore the body. You know, we want to mask things. It's like if your engine light goes on in your car, I hate that light, you put masking tape over it.
Yes.
I never have to see it again. Well, that's what we do with pain in our culture. We take an aspirin or a Tylenol or something so we don't have to pay attention to it. But in yoga, we pay attention. We're trained to pay attention. What am I feeling? Is this skillful or not? Should we be going further? Should I be backing up? Where am I feeling it? Is it superficial? Is it deep? This is one of the things I get into my Your Body, Your Yoga first volume is, how do you know? I got a whole list, a page list of sensations to look for that are typical of whether it's muscular or fascial or a joint capsule or a nervous system, and when it's too much, when it's too little. So it takes a while to learn how to do this. And that's why I think for beginners, to spend time in a pose, in a Yin style, and really feel their body, to notice what is happening. And if you feel it when you're in the pose, that's not good. If you feel it when you're coming out of the pose, you probably went too deep. If you feel it the next day, you have to think, what was I doing yesterday that may have caused this? And so you start to learn to pay attention. And that gets into all aspects of your life. You start to notice all sorts of things. Pain in relationships, pain in your workplace, all sorts of things you start to notice, and then you can make the skillful choice. Do I stay here or do I back off?
Yeah, it's so easy to ignore, so easy to dismiss and to push to the side and pretend like everything is fine. And but definitely, I know for, you know, if anyone's at home and feels like they have to push to get results, I can personally say my flexibility has just changed so drastically once I learned to just stop pushing. And once I learned to just go way, or just not go as far as I used to go into poses. And it's amazing. It's amazing the kind of results that you can achieve. Not that Yin Yoga is about achieving results, but it was certainly astounding just to notice the change in my range of motion in muscles that were painful because they were so overused. And and I thought I knew my body, and I thought I knew the dynamics, and I thought I was great at listening to my body, but I absolutely wasn't. So That is wonderful advice. I always like to ask people that come on this show, if there was one book, one resource that you could get the entire world to read, what would it be? I know. It's a selfish question. I'm always looking for stuff to read, so I like to ask it.
Well, not necessarily from a yoga point of view, but one book that really helped me in my meditation practice and understanding life was a book by Stephen Levine called Who Dies? And Stephen Levine is a Buddhist, Jewish psychotherapist, Zen practitioner. And he worked with people in palliative care, people dying of AIDS or cancer, people in chronic pain. And he helped them immensely by really looking at things, paying attention, figuring out who they really are. And instead of running away from the challenges of life, to notice them, to climb inside them. And that's such a valuable life skill. You don't have to wait until you're in the end stage of life to learn that. So I found that was a very pivotal book in my understanding of how to approach yoga, how to approach relationships, how to approach everything in life. Because it asks the question of who is this?
Sounds wonderful. I will definitely check it out. So as we wrap things up, is there any other kind of burning message that you would like to get out there, either about yourself teaching yoga or yin yoga, just any kind of note that you want to leave this on?
No, just yin is the other half of life. You need both. And if you don't embrace yin, Mother Nature will give it to you. So you might as well do it consciously than wait for an accident or an illness or something else to slow you down. So.
Proactive. I love it. Yeah. All right. So if people want to see or get in touch with you and find your book, they can get it at yinyoga.com.
Yeah, just check me out at yinyoga.com. And
fairly easy to remember. Great domain name. Okay, so thank you so much again for joining me. You've just really inspired my own teaching and my own practice of yin yoga. So it was truly wonderful. Hopefully I will be in Vancouver again and I can meet you in person and take your classes, because I think that would be great. Okay, that would be fantastic.
Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you.